It's,
What kind of
yes. Right.
Very hard to work together and try very hard also to work together.
Yes.
And that's kind of stuff that more or less
Yeah. Understood. Yes. I agree. So,
there's a
so similar to what they do with the child care.
you know, and so the situation was they're dictating pretty much how the job is done, et cetera. It's not like it's really intended like that. And so when people looking at it, they're not a position. But just looking at it here, actually very much like their employees money, but they don't get that not much production at all.
Right.
You go up and take the home.
Right.
And
Would this certainly, I mean, would it give them more options as far as negotiation?
unfortunately, nobody thinks that it does.
Right.
And in fact, overall, I don't think it's failures. I think that you don't make very much money. You don't have much freedom in their contract. You're out how you know making a lot of money making the phone. And so they're making the habit of doing something. They feel they will find by not having to do it. That's that the contractor has to pay himself. They can send them very job. One of the jobs here, you're employed generally in a couple of hours very early in the morning. And that doesn't get very good hourly rate on it. It's not like it's very much more. It's getting out there 4 in the morning and 20 below. Well, 3 in the morning and 20 below. Come down there and sort of shape and getting into the well. You don't make $20 an hour, you make $10 an hour.
Absolutely. And then you
And you're in McDonald's
right.
and
Right. When you start factoring in other hidden costs, like what it's going to cost you to be an independent contractor driving your car around, the hidden cost of insurance, the hidden cost of many things like that. So, yeah, I think it would probably go more stand to hurt them as independent contractors as it would just be employers.
what that's saying is that we're going to do this part, do it out there, and we'll have to try to do this part.
Right. So now, the newspaper wants to keep control over how they're delivered, things like that. They just don't want to pay. Essentially. Yeah, exactly.
how the farmers like, why the labor to hire, because some of the Mexico one wants to get out of the week.
Yeah.
That Mexico one, so that's, yeah. Okay, so it looks like it's going to be one of the challenges they might be.
Yeah.
And, we want to
Right. Absolutely. You know, and these guys, they just look at it as a cost of business. When they hand out fines to these farmers and things like that, not that I'm trying to persecute the farmers, but when they hand out fines to these farmers, they look at it as a cost of business. You know, once they start, if they start slamming people in jail for this, I think that will die down. But the simple fact is, they're not going to do that. They want to legalize immigrants that are already here, so they can work on the farms for less money, pretend like they're protected under the law when they really, the farmer's not going to pay them anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that you have, the person that has the power to make more money. That's one way to think.
It is.
And so, you have, and Governor Douglas, for example,
Yep.
working there,
Were they legal migrant workers or were they illegal migrant workers?
they were illegal migrant
Yeah.
and, that's the situation. What happens to those people is, they're coming back to Mexico and my boss, and, that's really not the sort of work environment we want to be.
Absolutely not.
Have to be on the highest level of the state, and that's really the key problem. Have somebody just let have anybody show up. It's unprecedented. Poor farmer, they have to help. Yeah, they're not going to get paid. They're not going to go to education and so on.
Right. And they're more apt to pay, you know, Joe Schmo from down the street under the table as they are likely to pay an illegal immigrant too. So
Sure. So when you have the governor, and the governor should be saying, well, obviously we have a labor problem here, so what I need to do is have a legal way that everybody from Florida, the majority of the people in Vermont agree with it, that works. That's what we exactly what we have passed.
no, we haven't had anybody that thinks outside the box, including our current governor, Cumberland.
Yeah, exactly. But what we should have is a public process that says, are we going to regulate immigration? Okay, let's deal with it. The whole idea of having people are half in and half out, they have no rights. They have to try to make things work,
Right.
but legally they don't have the same rights. That's what gets the problem.
Absolutely. You know, there's no protection for them. They're still human beings, and it's really reminiscent of the slave days. You know, like you know, one of the big things back in slavery days was that they said, well, they're you know, they get all their room and board, they get paid for what they do, so they should be happy with happy jobs.
They said, well, they should be happy because they are happy.
Right.
And like Governor Douglas was saying, I know all my places, they're really happy. They help me.
Absolutely. It's not a laughing matter, but yeah, no, absolutely.
Exactly what was written back in 1850.
Right.
How to make it sound. And now we have the water to write the same thing about migrant labor. You're saying, oh yes, there's one of the people that are happy to be here and love coming here.
Right.
Why are they happy to be here? Because they have a legal voice government at home. So there's only 300 families. The whole nation is an oil exporting nation for, gosh, I think 40 or 50 years.
Right.
And they haven't been able to take that prosperity and follow back to the people that are educated as you can.
No, because that's not their intent.
So they'd rather, they have a chance to return more cash every year. But who really wants to go 3,000 miles from home, the place where you speak the language, where it's freezing out cold in the winter,
Right.
and be away from the place of kids? You know, that's not people's ideal life. That's not life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Right.
That's just making the best of a bad life.
Yeah.
So, you know, what we need to be talking about is, you know, let's not become more like Mexico in that sense, of having all these people who are desperately poor and want to work 80 hours a week. Let's try and make Mexico the kind of place where you can make a decent living at 40 hours.
Right. And I mean, we've discussed that before on this show about that's the globalist agenda is that they want to bring us down to the level of the migrant worker, essentially.
Sure. Sure, yeah. You know, when we first started trying to get corporations to stop polluting, they took the government to court and said, you can't make us not pollute.
Right.
And so we forced them, bit by bit, to reduce the amount of pollution that industry puts out.
Yeah.
And what happened was, in the long run, they found places. There's one river that flows from Mexico into the U.S. right around San Diego, and that river is hideously polluted. It's polluted by factories.
Yep.
Most of the factories are American companies
DuPont.
set up in Mexico for the cheap labor and because they can get away with trashing the environment.
Right.
And exactly the same with China, where there's whole areas of China where they can't eat the rice
Right.
because of the stuff that's gone into the soil.
Yep.
So there's so much bad stuff in the soil that you know, the rice plant draws pollution up and puts it right into its seeds, into the grains of rice.
Right.
And you know, the corporations find that to be just fine, because of course the corporations don't feed on rice.
Right.
It's only a problem for human beings.
Yeah.
And you know, probably cattle and pigs too.
Right. Absolutely. And those cattle and pigs help feed and take care of the populace. And the corporations, they don't care about the populace because as long as you keep buying their products, they're perfectly happy with the millions that we give them. And it's really reminiscent because it is all interconnected. For the simple fact that every time we force them, our government forces them not to pollute, they find ways to cut costs elsewhere, and it's usually in the wages that they pay or the people that they employ.
Right, and again, it isn't quite that direct, so it escapes notice, but you have an area where they've been polluting for years, and you say you can't do that,
Right.
and then they relocate the plant somewhere else,
Right.
where there's less supervision.
Yeah.
But they're never saying we're going to pollute, they're just saying, oh, we can't afford to do business here anymore.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and this is something that I went through. Like when I was a kid, there were still garment mills in Lowell, Massachusetts, near where I grew up.
Right.
And those were all old plants. They were all right close to the river because they started out as water power and so on.
Right.
And so as the workers were saying, we want to make a decent living, then what was happening was they're saying, oh, we can't afford to do business here anymore, and they moved down south.
Right.
Wages were lower.
Yep.
And, you know, started the process all over again. And then the South and people pushed for a decent living and all that. They wanted to live the American dream. And they went off to Bangladesh. The factories were moved to Mexico, Bangladesh, Singapore, and then more recently to China.
Yep. And now there's a big push to bring them all back to America, but regardless, they don't want to pay that money. They don't want to pay the wages. So instead of forcing the corporations to either come back, pay the wages, or get taxed, what they're essentially doing is forcing them to lower the wages of Americans. We only have a couple minutes left here on the Montpelier segment. Have you heard anything about the Vermont Right to Know bill? Has anything been brought up in Montpelier?
I haven't heard I haven't heard anything new about it. I believe, I'm not sure exactly what the schedule is on that. I'll have to look into that. But,
I got an email saying they were gonna bring it up for discussion soon, so.
yeah.
Could be this week, could be next week, I don't remember now, I'd have to look. I was just curious to know if you'd heard anything from that.
No, I haven't. I didn't see it on the schedule today.
Okay.
There's a schedule published.
Right.
Well, what all the committees are dealing with, so I go through and I look at that.
Right.
But, it can be under a different kind of heading sometimes, so you don't spot it. But I don't think it's today.
Yeah. Okay. Next week on the show, we're going to have a special guest come on, Miss Margaret Laggins, who is the lobbyist for Monsanto, or one of the Monsanto lobbyists. She's also a lobbyist for many biotech industries here in Vermont. So we're gonna be talking to Miss Margaret Laggins next week about GMOs, about the Vermont right to know.
You're going to be hearing somebody who is very well versed.
Absolutely.
It's paid to study all the opposition and to, they have a whole department that's devoted just to refuting each and everything that they have heard.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. And to me, the kind of way you have to look at it is, why did you have to beat up on farmers?
Right.
Like, GMOs, they were suing farmers left and right.
Yep.
And, so basically they're hurting little guys.
Yep, absolutely. And they're also, she was going to bring in a farmer with her who is reliant on GMO crops. And they're going to talk about the great benefits of GMO crops for farmers. So it should be an interesting discussion. We've already started hitting the books since I got the confirmation email, and we're going to talk. And we're going to ask you some tough questions. So thank you, Phil, for coming, for calling the show and bringing us everything. Phil Carlton, our Montpelier correspondent, thanks for joining us.
Take care.
All right, well, that was Phil Carlton, our Montpelier correspondent. And again, we appreciate all the work that he does there in Montpelier. He travels down there to Montpelier every week and pays close attention to what's happening with our local news. Contact with our elected representatives and officials is an important right that we have in America. Some people will vote for an elected official and then never hear from or see that public servant again until re-election day. We here at the People's Message believe that the public officials and public servants that we put in there are indeed public servants. They're not in positions of power, they are in positions of servitude. If there's an issue or a law that piques your interest or that you care about, be it gun legislation, Vermont Right to Know bill, the health care bills that they're running through, I encourage you to write your representative. Tell them how you feel. If there is an issue that you believe should be addressed that isn't being looked at, then email them. Write them a letter, drop them a phone call, leave a message, do something. Somehow, we urge you, we encourage you to get in contact with your elected representative or official and get involved. We have senators, we have congressmen, we have local representatives. So often we squander the opportunities we have to be a part of this great system we have. Not just to fit into the system, not just to observe it and watch it, but to be an influential part of it. That's what I respect about Phil, is his willingness to get down there, to voice his opinion, and to witness the things that are going on. So thank you for doing that and coming on the show again to talk about it, Phil. The views expressed here on the People's Message, that is, are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of WOMMLP, its management board, or any of its affiliates. Again, you are listening to the People's Message here on 105.9 The Radiator, WOMMLP. Adam, what do you have for us on the current events side? We have a topic of discussion. It's medicating America. But we're gonna talk a little bit more about current events here for a minute. I'm gonna let Adam handle the mic. I'm gonna take a quick brief break, and then once he's done with that, we'll get into the topic of discussion.
Well, there's one thing that I want to bring up real quick. pertaining to the events taking place down in Boston. It's kind of troubling and upsetting for me to see the rights of citizens inside the city of Boston being violated, much like the events of 9/11 when those happened. People out of fear for what was happening and what had just taken place in this country responded by giving up their freedoms and giving up their rights. And that's going on right now in the city of Boston. You have a massive police presence in the area, obviously out of fear. The cops are scared. They don't know if another bomb will go off, and or if there's something else coming down the line. Nobody's really sure, and they still have yet to catch these people, or at the very least to let us know that they've caught them. But what's happening now is the police force down in Boston, the federal task force that are down there working, are actually taking it upon themselves to search pedestrians walking on the streets of Boston, to go through their bags. I don't know if it's happened, but I'm assuming that could potentially mean going through their cars as well at random checkpoints. Basically, what that is, in a nutshell, is a violation of our Fourth Amendment rights. In order for the government to want to seize your property or to look through your property, this includes emails, this includes your telephone, your cell phone, text messages, or your mail, or the items of your purse or your wallet or your backpack or your car. The government needs to get a warrant. They need to show justification, at the very least, with probable cause. So probable cause would be any information that would lead a reasonable person to assume that a crime is going to be committed, was committed, or is being committed. And unless that criteria is met, the government has no right, and no cop has a right to search your property, to ask you for identification, to ask you to identify yourself. They pretty much can ask you, but you're not obligated to render that information to them. You're under no obligation unless that officer can articulate to you what it is that he believes you have done wrong, i.e., I don't know, jaywalking, or something more heinous or more severe. And the bottom line is they have to prove that. They have to tell you and articulate that to you, at the very least. And if they do have information that links you to a crime, they have to get a warrant in order to search your property or the contents of your wallet, your bags, or anything like that. Well, what's happening right now in the city of Boston is being done out of fear. And I like to think about what Benjamin Franklin said in regards to people giving up their freedoms for security, and that those that do that deserve neither. Our freedoms are far more important than our own personal safety. I know that's a hard thing to grasp. I mean, it would be so much easier if we had a police force out there pushing people around and going through people's bags at will. We'd certainly find a lot more bad guys. We'd certainly find a lot more criminals. But would we be free? In that case, I mean, we'd be no better off than people living under the oppression of the Nazi Party in Germany back during World War II. What could happen? It would be cops in brown shirts asking people for their papers. I mean, that's what this is reminiscent of. It's an extremely troubling event, but it happens every time there's a disaster, some type of an emergency situation, a terrorist attack, a school shooting, a theater shooting. People freak out, and then our rights get taken away by this massive police state, which is what we live under, in my opinion.
Well, we're certainly headed in that direction as far as the police state is concerned.
Oh, I think we're there, Steve.
DHS has certainly stepped well beyond the bounds of the Constitution. Our law enforcement personnel, I don't know if you said this already or not, I was out of the room, but DHS reserves the right during any kind of disaster or emergency to then declare that all police personnel are under the jurisdiction of DHS, under the command of the Department of Homeland Security. And the Department of Homeland Security was never existed before President Bush II, King Bush II, came into power and created them after 9/11. So, yeah, technically we are getting closer to a police state than we have ever been. And the Department of Homeland Security, among other agencies, have really gone very far in...
Well, I mean, really, what's left that needs to happen for us to call it a police state? If we're not there already, what's left that needs to occur in order for us to consider our current environment a police state? I mean, if you look historically at places like Nazi Germany, really the only thing we're missing are concentration camps, and even that's debatable. So, are we living in a police state or are we not? Let's not beat around the bush here. We're constantly under surveillance. Our emails are being hacked by our government. We know this now. It's even in the mainstream media. They're looking into our Facebook pages, our Twitter pages. What's left that really needs to happen? I mean, we have cameras hanging off of stops or street lights. We have even ATM cameras are capturing footage of people going about their daily lives. But and on the other side of the coin, if you or I pick up a camera and we want to film the police, and while they're going about their daily lives, we get arrested. We have our film confiscated, or we're fined. I mean, just recently down in Maryland, there was a man who was filming the police, and they arrested him, and they wanted to throw the book at him and put him in jail for something like 50 years. I mean, 50 years for filming the cops? I mean, luckily the guy's case was thrown out. But what's left that needs to happen before we can stop beating around the bush and call this what it is, and it's a police state inside the United States of America?
Short of martial law, I
understand that. I understand trying to downplay it and stuff, but I don't see the point doing that personally, because I believe that that's exactly where we're at. We live in a police state. We're constantly under surveillance. We're under the thumb of the law. They pass legislation, statutes. It doesn't matter if it's natural law, common law. We're obligated, even if we don't agree with it, to follow these statutes. And ultimately, what that is a police state, in my opinion.
There are instances of law enforcement abuses. There are instances throughout our country, and these instances are certainly rising in number. They are certainly rising in frequency, and to come out and say that we are currently in a police state, I mean, we still hold a lot of freedoms. You and I are still on the radio talking about these things. You and I are still able to talk about the Constitution. We're able to talk about the wrongdoings of the global elite. We're able to talk about the wrongdoings of our government officials. And we still hold a lot of rights. And we still are able, when these cases come up in their frequency, and they do quite often, we are still able to get them thrown out of court. And we're still able to have a case. Now they are moving towards being able to take that away from us. And every day we get closer and closer to becoming a full-out totalitarian police state. Well, I don't think we're quite there yet, but we are certainly on the verge. Ladies and gentlemen, we are on the verge of becoming a police state, and we are closer than we have ever been. And it is a short step over the line. It is a short step over the edge to where we are a complete and utter totalitarian state. police state. In Boston, there are photographs and images of National Guardsmen rolling down the street in Boston. Folks, I don't care if 20 bombs went off. Things have calmed down in Boston right now. The Boston police have never once needed the help of the National Guard to maintain order. They are not rioting. There's no picketing. There's no chaos. There's no evidence of that is seen.
Well, even if there was,
Even if there was,
the posse comitatus
Absolutely.
makes it against the law for the military to be
Absolutely.
used in a domestic law enforcement type scenario.
And in the media, you keep hearing this droning of the Boston PD are looking into this case. The Boston PD this. It's the feds conducting the investigation. It's not Boston PD. The FBI have taken over the investigation. They are using the Boston PD for their own needs, but they are well equipped to handle this situation themselves. They do not need the National Guard policing Boston, folks, and we need to keep a very close eye on this, but I don't think it's time to freak out quite yet. Again, the views expressed are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of WOMMLP, its management board, or any of its affiliates. Again, you are listening to 105.9 The Radiator, home of the broadcast known as The People's Message. I am your humble host, Steve Hutchinson. I've been here for the last 2 hours. I'll be here for another hour. My co-host, Adam Martell, also the man in charge of current events of our show. Adam Martell is here in the studio as well. Adam and I, we differ on some opinions. We have different opinions from one another. We do agree on many things, including liberty, equality. You know, the People's Message here, we believe that an informed people are an empowered people, and empowered people are motivated people, and motivated people affect real, lasting change in your communities and in society. The People's Message is a platform for constructive conversations in the hope of better unification. What we set out to do in every program is put forth solutions to problems that we face and invite discussions on issues that affect free Americans. We promote freedom, liberty, equality, free thought, and welcome opinion. Adam and I don't pretend to be unbiased. We have our own opinions on issues that we may disagree on and that we may disagree with you on. And we invite you to contact us with your opinion. You may call the show at 802-861-WOMM. That's 802-861-9666. We have a community Facebook page that you can also get a hold of us on. You can follow us on Twitter, leave us a message, thepeoplesmsg/twitter.com, or email us at thepeoplesmessage@rocketmail.com. So, Adam, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Are you finished?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. We're going to move on to the topic of discussion today. My beautiful wife, Ashley, took some time. She's also our research assistant, or, well, not even assistant. She's our research personnel. She does a lot of research on the topics of discussion for us. And today, we're going to talk about medicating America. Multi-million-dollar marketing and propaganda campaigns convinced children that virtually any experience of sadness, say losing a pet or having a friend move away, was a disease that could be treated with help from Big Pharma. Millions of children were put on drugs like Prozac, and the great push towards diagnosing kids with bipolar disorder was on its way by a corrupt psychiatry industry controlled by Big Pharma. There is no rational scientific explanation for the explosion in diagnoses of brain chemistry diseases, nor is there any examination of potential causes for unhappiness, such as poor diet, lack of sleep, chronic environmental stresses, chemical exposure, or the fact that sometimes life is an emotional roller coaster, folks. We all know about that. And that's, well, life, folks. But they would rather say that it is some emotional disorder, some chemical imbalance in the brain, and they want to pump you full of drugs for their own profit.
What used to be just a normal unhappy moment or episode of sadness is now described by drug-pushing psychiatrists as a disease requiring chemical treatment. Creative expression, excitement, and curiosity in children is no longer a sign of a healthy, learning child. It's a symptom of a disease called ADHD that requires treatment with a powerful mind-altering amphetamine drugs that used to be called speed when they were sold on the street. 6 million American children are on psychiatric drugs today, but most of those drugs have never even been tested for children. They are simply testing those drugs right now on our children. Your child is a guinea pig, the big pharma. ADHD, by definition, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, is a prevalent disorder during childhood affecting 3 to 7% of children, about 1 in 10 children, according to the CDC. An ADHD patient has problems sustaining attention and controlling impulse and behavior. The Mayo Clinic states that stimulants such as, oh boy, there's a big word, methylphenidate, dextroamphetamine, are the most commonly prescribed stimulants for ADHD. They state that while these drugs are very effective, they do come with risks. There's a YouTube video out there, maybe Anna can look that up for me, that we can play on there. There's a panel of doctors who have diagnosed hundreds of cases of ADHD and ADD. They've treated them, they've prescribed drugs to these children. And there was a conference. It was the World ADHD Conference. I believe it was a BBC reporter stood up and asked these doctors, what are the criteria for ADHD? What would you use to diagnose someone with ADHD? And every doctor on that panel sat there and hemmed and hawed and wondered and tried to come up with an answer. But none of them could come up with a definitive answer. These are doctors that have diagnosed hundreds of cases. Hang on a second. Do you know what year? Oh, I don't know what year. That could be the one right there. I believe it was the very first. Let's see if we can find out. We're searching for the clip. We're going to play it for you here. Maybe. If it's the right clip. For some reason we're not getting any sound. Oh, that would be one.
This rare video provides a disturbing glimpse of the event.
This is the one.
One which the government does not want you to see.
We have agreed that there is no consistent diagnostic test for ADHD. Our knowledge about the cause or causes of ADHD remains speculative. I would now like to open the forum to questions from the press.
Joe Palca with National Public Radio. It sounds a little bit like you're saying that the definition is a little like the Supreme Court's definition of pornography, which is you know it when you see it.
No,
I'm concerned with that.
We're going to disagree, and I would like any member of the panel to describe a typical ADHD in terms of symptomatology. Mark, would you like to? Since you see them in your practice.
I think the panel has been frank in, the difficulties here are immense in terms of these. It is hard. It's very hard to know how to answer this question. These kids, in my experience, when you see these kids, they are, several standard deviations different in terms of they cannot sit still, they cannot attend, they cannot, even when they are as if driven by a motive. There are some good clinical descriptions, of these kids. I think
As pediatrician Mark Vonnegut struggles desperately to describe the symptoms of an ADHD child, it's fair to note that he must have diagnosed and treated hundreds of children for ADHD prior to this conference. But on this day at least, Dr. Vonnegut isn't clear at all about what identifies.
Again, there you have it, folks. A doctor who has diagnosed hundreds of cases of ADHD cannot answer a simple question of, what are the symptoms of ADHD? Oh, sorry, I thought you had something. It's clear. It's a sham. It's a sham for pharmaceutical companies to pay, to be paid. Essentially, what they did was they sat there and they said, what market have we not touched? What market is untouched by the pharmaceutical companies? Where can we make our next $1 billion? Kids. The risks of these drugs that they're giving out are heart problems in rare cases. Children and adolescents who took stimulants died from heart-related deaths. The American Heart Association recommended getting EEG tests done before and during treatment, while the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that you only do a family history and physical examination. Abuse of stimulants are part of the amphetamine class of drugs and carry a risk of abuse. Basically, what you're doing is you're starting your child on a road to addiction. Psychiatric problems, stimulants may also trigger or exacerbate symptoms of psychiatric disorders such as paranoia, hostility, depression, aggression, and anxiety. Non-stimulants, the Mayo Clinic also states that non-stimulants such as atomoxetine are the other most commonly prescribed drugs for ADHD. Non-stimulants can cause liver damage and may increase suicidal thoughts. It is truly amazing, ladies and gentlemen, that we would put our kids in harm's way because of a man who is a psychiatrist who's basically claimed to be a doctor, can write your child a prescription and says, your child has hyperactive attention deficit disorder, so let's give them a pill. Bipolar disorder, by definition, is a mood disorder sometimes referred to as manic depression that involves cycles of depression and elation and mania. Since the mid-1990s, the number of children diagnosed with bipolar disorder has increased staggering number, 4,000%. I'll say that, 4,000%. That is a huge jump. It is estimated that over 1 million children have been diagnosed as having bipolar disorder. In the 1990s, Dr. Janet Wozenak was the first person to popularize the idea of bipolar in children. Thanks, Doc. Appreciate that, Miss Janet. Wozenak got a job as a researcher in the clinic of Dr. Joseph Biederman. Felt that Biederman, famous Harvard psychiatrist, mind you, who was studying kids with ADHD. Biederman felt that a portion of kids